Something else that happened at Wednesday's Chicago School Board meeting, new data was released about enrollment. Natalie, you talked about that a little bit earlier. What exactly did we learn, Heather, about where Chicago stands now?
That Chicago is no longer the third largest school district in the nation.
Say it ain't
is
so.
The fourth largest school district in the nation, behind New York, LA, and Miami-Dade, which is, I think, an indication of why these issues of new schools and what schools should get investment is really fraught in a district that is losing students. How do you take care of those students who find themselves in smaller schools that don't have the resources of schools such as Peyton or Northside College Prep? And that, I think, is why sort of there is so much sort of, for lack of a better word, angst and concern about what this means for the future of the district.
Because we also see, growth in some, it's mirroring the growth in this city. Mm-hmm. The higher income is growing and poverty is growing, and you have a middle class that's shrinking. So, there's, this probably isn't fair, but I'll say it anyway. There are quasi-public-private schools on the north side.
Absolutely.
In areas that are rich. And
True.
They're growing, and they want annexes. And, even in the South Loop Elementary School. And then you have other places that have declining enrollment. Mm-hmm. And then you have lots of charter schools that have opened, and that has siphoned off. So it's like this. It's sometimes hard to talk about CPS in one breath because it's a patchwork of different things happening all across the city based on demographics.
Perfect word.
Yeah.
Patchwork.
So I think it's really easy to think, well, this debate is we need a new high school for all of these new families that have moved to the South Loop and Chinatown. But there are plenty of high school seats for everybody who lives in those neighborhoods. It's just that for whatever reason, Phillips and Tilden and the other high schools aren't somewhere parents, and I will say it's white parents, it's Asian parents who don't see those schools as options for those kids.
Yeah.
And that is puts a lot of stress on the selective enrollment system, which means that all of those kids are trying to leave their neighborhoods to go to places like Peyton or Northside College Prep. Mm-hmm. So there are a finite number of selective enrollment seats. So then parents are saying, okay, well, what if we build a new, different neighborhood high school? So it's a solution to the same problem, but it's just sort of coded in truly just racist ways in some ways, because this is sort of another way that segregation in Chicago is sort of continues to reverberate into all of our lives.
And Heather's right. These nice white parents aren't going to send their kids to the South Side School. The racial equity assessment that was done previously on the NTA plan said, look at Dunbar. Dunbar is closer to the South Loop than Phillips is, because the argument has been Phillips is too far. Okay, you don't want to go to Pershing Road. Dunbar is a beautiful facility. And so why aren't we rethinking? Now, to be fair, there are some black parents who are like, hey, don't come into this school trying to change things for the nice white parents.
Yeah.
But how do you have a facility that has tech, that has adult services, that could have the bilingual, address some of the needs that the Chinatown parents have in a great facility? There's always been a lack of imagination in this city when it comes to dismantling segregation, whether it's in housing or if it's in schools.
Yeah.
And so the solution becomes, let's just do something new to appease this one group without thinking. And even though CPS is saying, no, this is for black students. And I believe that they believe that.
Well, they're saying this is for everybody. That's going to be one of the most diverse schools in the city, they say, even though, the funding for it came from a representative from Chinatown. The political push for it came primarily from parents, affluent parents in the South Loop. And now they want to take the land from a black community to actually build the school. So they're saying, well, let's include everybody in it. I also think it's interesting very quickly to note that some of these debates have been had already. We're going through this again. Natalie mentioned the debate over potentially closing the very highly performing elementary school that's already in the same area a few years ago, and turning that into a high school.
Yeah.
Well, there is land at Ickes was already taken to build a running track and a turf field for Jones High School, which is a selective enrollment school
in the South Loop.
Down the South Loop. And so there's this perception that this land that was public housing, supposed to be used for replacement housing, that it's just available when we need it for something else at the same time that all these other cross currents are going on.
Yeah, before we move on, we'll wrap this section up with a comment from Christopher on YouTube who says, my thoughts is the process of getting it approved seems shady. Removing a school board member who was against the school with an alderman and then replacing that alderman with his sister.
That's the other half of it, that Alderman Michael Scott was replaced by his sister Monique Scott, an appointment made by Lori Lightfoot.
Mm-hmm.